Magnificent morning, awesome afternoon, and exciting evening wherever you are in the world. Just make sure you make that time of the day either exciting, awesome, or magnificent. Today I am with my friends. This is MindPlore with Carla and Friends, and I have Jeanne who makes sure I don't forget anything. Not always, but she's pretty good at that. We have Neville Gaunt, who reminds me about my mindset, and I did it myself this morning. I just decided how the day was going to go, and it's going to be an excellent day. And I have Mirza Ali, who I'm getting to really know, and I'm actually beginning to like him a lot. So, I'm not sure what's going to come out of my mouth today. I'm kind of surprised by it today. But
welcome to the club, Mirza.
And we are going with the flow. Instead of deciding how we want our lives to go, we're going to let the flow of the river of life take us where it wants us to be and accept it and not fight against it. And that's what this conversation is all about. And my panel is already laughing at me hysterically. So I am going to allow Jeanne to take over so I can get the YouTube link out there for you guys to watch the show. Jeanne, please take over and go with the flow.
Gladly. So today's quotes, I start with Lao Tzu. He says, nothing is softer or more flexible than water, yet nothing can resist it. That's the definition of true power, by the way. Nothing is softer or more flexible than water, yet nothing can resist it. Now, the great global philosopher Anonymous writes,
Anonymous? There's no name.
Exactly.
That's why he's a great global philosopher.
Anonymous says a lot of great things. Being in the flow means being aware that the river of life is flowing to us at every moment. Being in the flow means accepting whatever comes and putting it to good use before passing it on. Going with the flow means allowing whatever comes up to move on freely without holding on in any way. That's a good definition of getting in the flow. And then the other great philosopher, Oprah Winfrey, writes, move with the flow. Don't fight the current. Resist nothing. Let life carry you. Don't try to carry it. And when I read that one, I thought it's like we're in a power struggle with the flow. And the more you try to exert your own personal power, the more the flow tells you the universe is in charge. So I thought that would be a great kind of series of quotes here, because it talks about how soft water is, but yet nothing resists it. So if you go all the way through, we know what the flow is thanks to Anonymous, and then there's the power of the flow thanks to Oprah. Mirza, you're shaking your head?
Well, I basically have some stuff in the favor of flow from the perception and perspective where I see the things, and some stuff against the flow. And I'm going to start off with the stuff that's against the flow. See, rivers don't go reverse. That's how time is, right? And there are two types of fish in the river. One that goes with the flow. They are alive people, alive fish. People are just like that. The two types of fish. One that goes with the flow, wherever the circumstances, situation, life takes them, they just go with the flow. They are alive, but they are dead, in my opinion. However, there's another type of fish that is also alive, but even if it has to go against the flow of the water, it would create its own path it would take extreme ownership, accountability, and personal responsibility, and overcome and become. That is, in my opinion, a live fish. So you, wherever like life is taking, you are the architect of your universe. You're the captain of your soul. You are the master of your fate, because your inner world, inner reality, is a manifestation and replica of external reality. It's all about the you being aligned emotionally, physically, logically, and spiritually. Once you do that, you create your own pathways, you create your own destination, and that's the vision and mission that is you're assigned aligned with the larger things that you know what, and then you that moves the needle for you. So one who that goes with the flow. That's how people are. Life is happening to them, but there are other people who have a growth and abundance mindset. Life is happening for them, and then they create their own pathway against the flow of the water. So those were a few of my comments.
I would posit that they actually are going with their own personal flow. So, you know, salmon won't live if they don't go upstream to find the place to spawn.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But that's the salmon flow versus the bass flow, which is to go with the water down to the ocean.
Absolutely.
So
that was my analogy.
Yeah, we all have different manifestations of flow, I think. Now I've got Nigel giggling, which is always a fun thing to watch. Because when Nigel gets a great smile on his face and then he starts rocking back and forth when he's giggling. So
it's there are lots of types of flow. I mean, the thing is, everything is contextual. So sometimes you have to go with the flow, but not always. And that's then down to courage. So Lao Tzu was absolutely right. And I didn't know about Lao Tzu, but I can imagine I should have learned about Lao Tzu when I started to buy property, because no matter how hard it rains, that rain will come into the house somehow. It won't actually stay on the roof, and it won't come in where it's actually come out. So it is flexible. It's not necessarily a flexible friend, but it doesn't go in a straight line either. So the thing is, you have to be an investigator to find out, okay, well, the water may be coming into me here, but actually it probably is over here. And that's where the hole in the roof is. And trust me, that's personal experience over a number of years. but I want to go back to Plato. Was probably after Lao Tzu, maybe similar age, and that's having courage, because courage is knowing what not to fear. So, in other words, when you go against the flow, you don't really fear anything, because everyone else is going to back up against you. They're going to say, well, this is the only way we've ever done it. And we all know what those people were saying before COVID. They weren't saying it during COVID, and they're certainly not saying it after. They're now being tested to go with the flow. And that's good.
Yeah, there's a level of leadership when you see everything going one way. That doesn't necessarily mean that's the flow. And that's one of the things that Carla mentioned, mindset, changing mindset. And that's one of the things that leaders can do on the spot. They can look and see, this isn't right, you know. And I'm thinking in terms of, and we see this a lot in the news, of mob mentality. Going with the flow doesn't mean following the mob, you know, because sometimes those people are crazy. You know, you don't know what's causing that. And it takes a very strong, courageous leader to say, whoa, something's not right here. And then to actually change that perception of flow. When I'm in the flow, as I'd like to talk about the flow, it's a much more spiritual kind of experience, in that my consciousness kind of goes away. You know, I'm conscious, but I'm not quite struggling with the power to control things. So when I'm writing, or when I'm doing an art project, or when I'm actually training a group, I feel the words that come out of my mouth aren't mine, because they are coming from a greater intelligence that I'm part of. It's the Reiki in energy kind of thing, of idea, where we can all, with a little bit of training, we can all get connected to that Reiki energy flow. Well, in the flow means allowing something bigger than us to give us direction. Because, okay, you've heard this before, so you don't have to laugh, but my favorite line when things are going crazy is, you know how to make God laugh. Tell him your plans. Because I know that, the big guy up in the universe is going, I got bigger plans for you, honey, and you have no idea. And that's what going in the flow is, being open to that, allowing things, understanding that there's a reason that you might be struggling to go against the flow in your perception. When I was working in the corporate world, and an executive vice president would come up and tell me to do something, it was actually my job to say no. Part of my job was to protect the company and from itself. And, so I jokingly say, if you're in public relations and you haven't been fired, you're not doing your job, because you have to go against the flow, and I learned how to do that was to simply say, what headline do you want to see appear? Because if you do that, here's what the headline is. And then it was their decision. Sometimes I'd say, you need to write it out because I'm not doing this. This isn't my decision. But that took courage to go against the flow of what somebody in authority was telling me. But it's uncomfortable sometimes, as much as it's comfortable most of the time. But as Carla is my witness, I keep saying, look at this from 5,000 feet. And that gets me out of the detail. That gets me out of the detail and allows me to be in the flow. And Carla's giving me I've been talking too long sign.
Purple.
Either that or she wants to talk. I'm not quite sure.
Purple.
Not quite yet. Go on. I want to finish.
I'm gonna add few humble sense. So the first type of flow state that I was saying, that when you're going with the flow and you're not taking ownership, accountability, and responsibility with your life to be the best version of yourself that you want, and goes back to what Neville said. You have to have courage and grit and stamina to push through all these obstacles and odds and overcome and become. And what Jeanne was saying, and I just love the fact, because I come from innovation and invention and entrepreneurial tech fraternity, where we are like constantly inventing, reinventing, repurposing, re-innovating stuff with the Silicon Valley and so on and so forth. That is the flow state that you get with the athletes when you're out of time and space, when time dilates, right? You are in a zone. You are in the, in everything is effortless, it's flawless, right? You are, time flows and you are like totally disconnected with the, you're like in a zone where you have hyper focused attention, and that is the level that you achieve when you are in that kind of flow state, where the grit and stamina and I always say motivation will get you started, transformation will keep you going, but there's something called ruthless focus and discipline. But there's something beyond discipline when you're spiritually aligned with the vision and mission, like Neville was saying, that is bigger than you, larger than you, and you were saying that is a flow state. That is like when you are out of the time and space. That's when you keep pushing through no matter what, and then you keep going through any pain or challenges and problems. You see the challenges as a gifts and problems as a gold mine, and your sense of self dilates, time dilates, and you are in a peak performance, high performance, high achievement, high performer, high achiever, high producer, heavy hitter state. So it's all natural. So that's when you get to that level. You're hyper focused, undivided, uninterrupted attention. So that is the level that you achieve when you are your alignment is straight. So those were my few humble things, and I totally echo what Jeanne was saying, based on her past experience. Over to you.
Neville?
Yeah, I'm listening intently because Mirza, you mentioned athletes. There's a fantastic book out there, by the way, called Flow. And it's by Mihaly, and I'm going to get the rest part of his name wrong, Csikszentmihalyi, Czechoslovakian, I believe. But if you just type in Flow on Amazon, you'll find it. And it talks about athletes being in that flow zone. And anyone that's looked at, the quadrants, you see an XY like this, and then flow is somewhere in here. So once you get in that flow, things happen. And athletes know it more often than not. But the interesting thing is the best athletes are not just in flow, they are the flow. And there is a big difference between being in that flow bubble and driving the flow bubble. So we'll go back many, many years. It's called in high jump the Fosby flop because Jim Frosby invented it. Every other person, and you talked about entrepreneurship and Silicon Valley, Mirza, this is that innovation step. Everyone else was striding over. And Fosby said, screw that, I'm going to do it another way because I can get higher. And guess what he did? He not just got higher, he got a lot higher. And now today, without exception, every Olympic athlete does the Fosby flop.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And now what they're doing is they're sort of reinventing it. But fundamentally, they're all turning their body backwards. So that's really not just being in flow, but being the flow.
The flow.
And a lot of people,
yeah.
I'm just saying, a lot of people experience being in flow. Because we all know when we're having a really good time, whether it's you as an individual or you as a team, and people are coming up with ideas and you're really excited and the adrenaline level goes up and you look up and you see the clock and you think, my God, where did those 4 hours go? We know that we were in flow. And the key thing there is, for everybody, you can get back in flow if you work out what you were doing at that time. And it's like anything else, you only need to be excited. What was it taking to be excited?
Yeah.
I won't go into the obvious. Jeannie's got it immediately. But, when you're really excited in certain arenas, time moves, doesn't it? So.
One of the things that I learned from my grandkids, and Neville, I know you've got some new grandbabies, and this is something even in the youngest, most infant size, babies go with the flow, 2-year-olds go with the flow. There's nothing but flow in kids, and it's something that we should look at in awe. I watch my 2.5-year-old grandson be extremely happy about something, and in a second he flips into a temper tantrum, and left to his own devices, he's learned to calm himself down. So again, it's like that, and he's back to being happy. And I watch with great interest as he goes through this. You can see all these colors on his face in how he's reacting to the emotions, and that allows him to jump into the emotion, process the emotion, get out of the emotion, and get back to being happy. And it's insightful when you can sit back and pay attention to what children are going through. And then watching the older kids as they try to talk me through something. It's amazing. They're teaching me a game, but they're trying to teach me the game so that they can win, which is it's a fun thing, but Nana takes care of that because my son introduced them to the game of fish and told them that I was the world champion. So now they're trying to constantly get over me. So there's a flow in how they're trying to be creative. So watching the older kids get into the flow and be creative is just as fascinating as watching the little ones. And if we could keep a little bit of that childlike insight inside of us, we would not get so distracted from the flow, and go, okay, take a deep breath. Let's see what's going on. Let's figure out how do we get into that space. And then we might enjoy life a little bit, because I just love how life likes to throw, crap inside of our flow to see how it gets in you. And I just watched Wonder Woman, so now I know you go boing, 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 and you get things to just move out, and that's powerful. That's not letting the universe take your power. That's you showing I still have power, even though I'm trying to get into that flow, and then I'm in the flow. That those distractions that can take us off course can be very tiny. It could, for some people, it's just you looked at them funny. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but when I was growing up, if my dad was in a bad mood, all I had to do was make a face like I'm quizzical, and he would get into a level of anger that no kid should ever see, and I didn't understand it. Now as an adult, I understand he was having a bad day and he didn't know how to mitigate that. Where I learned because of him, I was able to, when I had a bad day, I used my drive home to breathe and kind of let go. So when I was with my little one, he couldn't set me off like that. So there's a grace in learning from others, how they managed or didn't manage. And then there's a grace in learning from yourself on how to just keep moving. And I was talking to Carla about just grace in general. We don't really have a great definition for grace, but we know when we see it. And I think the definition for me is when you are in the flow, you are full of grace. And that means that things can come at you and you're not about to tear somebody apart. You're actually letting things come at you and go, okay, let's see what we can do with this. Because part of the grace is learning the lesson. What's going on? What do I need to learn? Mirza?
It goes back to how you were saying very eloquently that when you're in a flow state, you're feeling at your best and you are performing at your best. Your intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation are both aligned, right? That is the time when the happy chemicals such as dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, they have such a rush on the activity, and they're taken over, and you are in the zone. You are beyond the time and space, and that they did an extensive study, in 1964, Roger Bannister, he broke 4 minutes miles, right? And before that, medical science couldn't comprehend that if one person can do a mile in 4 minutes. And then the day he did that, he created this morphogenic, field around that, because he was in the zone, he was in a flow state. It became believable for many, many people. So when we are in the flow state, we are at our optimal performance. We are in a hyper focused and uninterrupted state, just like how Neville was saying. The time flies, just like in a heartbeat, and your productivity, your production goes through the roof. As a high performer, high achiever, high producer, heavy hitter in the business and marketplace, and in the world of invention and innovation and achievements, and in athletes, and you apply it in any discipline of your life, that you are able to produce that flow level on demand if you are in the moment. In our last session, I said something, and I got very good feedback from your audience that yesterday was history, tomorrow is a mystery. Be in a moment, own the moment, seize the moment, own you now. Be the best version of yourself in now. Be all you can be in now. Rewire, reframe, recondition, repercept, reparadigm, pattern your patterns of existence, jumping into your flow state. And then how you were saying, the influx of ideas and your performance. And that is the only piece, because these days we are drowning in information, but we are lacking in wisdom. There's so many, we're competing against the distraction. And all these distractions, they are like trying to catch our attention, right? That is the only thing that we need to protect. And flow state comes with the happy chemicals, with the focus. Where focus goes, energy flows. Whatever you focus on expands. Follow one course of action until you're successful. And that is the game changer. That is the delineation between somebody who's on the growth trajectory of their lives and somebody who's like, kind of like three types of people who make things happen, who just watch things happen, and people who just wonder what happens. Now, the people who make the thing happen, they have a knack of unlocking and unleashing this flow state. Thank you. I guess Carla has to say something.
Well, I would say that there's an important word to get to that level, Mirza, and that's practice. That we don't know how to go up that chain, if you will, without practicing and falling down from time to time. That's the other thing I notice with kids. They fall down, they get right back up. We have to practice. And when I'm working with public speakers, I have them, before they do a presentation, I have them practice in the mirror when you're shaving or doing your makeup, practice when you're getting dressed, practice with your spouse, practice with your friends. By the time you're done practicing, people are going to hate you because you've been practicing for so long. And when you think you know it really well, do it one more time so that it becomes muscle memory.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's part of being in the flow, is practicing suspending our own belief so that we can be open to bigger beliefs.
Absolutely.
Carla, is your hand up, or are you
just 1 cent on yeah, go ahead, Carla. You want to say?
No, Mirza, say what you want to say.
Your previous sessions were very powerful. I was thankfully I was part of that. We were discussing something called structural plasticity in your brain. The first time you do something, but repetition is the mother of learning. You turn that structural plasticity into neural plasticity, into it becomes part of you, from unconsciously incompetent to unconsciously competent. It's there now because you have practiced it so many times. It defines who you are. And then it's very easy for you to step into that power, because repetition is the mother of learning. It's just like overcoming and becoming through all those hurdles, and with the grit and stamina, with the perseverance. That was like last conversation that we had, and I'm so happy that these two are so interlinked and related to each other. Over to you, Carla. You wanted to say something?
Okay, I'm going to play the devil's advocate right
Okay.
now for a moment. When we're not in the flow and we're looking at everything, oh, this isn't working, that's not working, nothing's working for me. In a way, is that the flow for the moment? Because that is how we are seeing the world. And when we begin to change our thinking, we are in the flow, we're kind of going with the moment, but our moment may not be what we want it to be, only because we don't see it. I don't know if that was a clear
I think it is. I think it was a clear question, Carla. And the way I interpret the question is, when you're in the midst of what may be considered a bit of a crisis for the moment, are you in the flow? And I think that a lot of times we manufacture these moments because we need to learn a lesson. And we fight the flow because we think we know better. And so it becomes a little bit difficult to even see that there is a flow. And that's when we have to use certain tools like, I used to laugh when they'd say, somebody would say, you need to let it go. And I'd go, Like, how do you do that? Because you're in the midst of that issue. So it's more about finding a way to get above it for a minute. That's why I always talk in my coaching work. I go, let's go to 5,000 feet. So we get out of the detail, because we're fighting it. That's why it's so difficult. And our ego mind says, I'm in control and things aren't following. And, you know, our higher mind is saying, let the kids figure it out. You know, so our higher power kind of mind is saying, you need to learn this lesson. And when you learn the lesson to kind of surrender a little bit to the power of something outside of you for just a moment, then you can take that deep cleansing breath and go, okay, now I can handle it. So let me give you an example. When I was in the midst of a physical crisis, I was at work and there was a wildfire and everybody was going crazy. What do we do? We've got 100 people in the fire zone. How are we going to find them? We can't find them. And it was my job to get everybody to take that collective breath and go, okay, what can we do? You know, how can we fix it? And it wasn't about fixing the fire, because we didn't have that. What I could say to them is, what can we control? And we started a phone tree. So everybody was calling different people to see, you know, how can I get in touch with this person? We want to make sure that they're safe. And it was, you know, getting 3 or 4 people on that level of okay, we're moving forward through it, so that by the end of the day, we had contacted everybody and knew that they were safe. But that was my job, to get everybody out of that crazy moment of, oh my God, the world's going to end. It's kind of the Chicken Little effect. You know, the sky is falling, and somebody's like, that was an acorn coming out of a tree. You know, it's one of the reasons that I think people need coaches, because if you have a really good coach, they're not telling you what to do, but they're holding the space for you to be able to see what you can do. You know, so yes, in the flow means that you're going to have some moments like that, but it's learning how to ride the waves, if you will. You know, not all the waves are gentle. If you've ever been in the Pacific Ocean during a storm, you know it is not a gentle wave. However, it's still part of the flow. There are lessons to be learned. So we struggle with the lesson, and then we get back into that flow state. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was the point that I wanted to bring out, because people will say, oh, I'm not in the flow, I'm thinking negatively. That's fine. That's where you are now. But if you're aware of it, that's when you can begin to make that shift to something positive. You can't make that shift if you don't realize where you are at the moment. I mean, yesterday was crazy for me after the English show. I really was not sure what the next minute would bring, even with the internet. The internet was horrible here yesterday. And I was like in the negative flow, you know, nothing's working, I'm so upset. But at the same time, it was exactly as it should be. And accepting that moment as it is helps you move through and know, oh, it can change at any moment now. Now that I'm aware that this is my thinking, I need to flip the coin. Neville, you look like you're going to say something.
I'm not too sure I should, but I'm going to. We have got the perfect world-class example of people being in one type of flow, which is completely against an overwhelming force of humanity in the other type of flow. Putin v. Ukraine. We have one person who is so distanced from reality He believes he's in flow. And his generals are too scared to tell him, hang on a minute, excuse me, sir, that's wrong, because the ultimate penalty will be standing up against a firing squad. But the rest of the world, without exception now, even allies of this person are saying, wake up, this is really not the way to do things in this modern world. And certainly not to mention nuclear weapons. So, Carla, you're absolutely right. People can be in a particular flow. I call it the rut, because you want the longer you're in the rut, the bigger the rut becomes, and you can go round and round and round and round, and you go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's like, getting stuck with the car wheels, on a very soggy, wet pitch, and it just keeps going round and round and round, and someone says, don't put the throttle on. It's not going to help you. And you think, oh, yeah, it will. And you put the throttle on and you just go, the back of the car goes, and you make an even bigger rut. So, yeah, it's absolutely right. It's not commonly called flow, because flow has got quite positive connotations, just as ego has probably got all the negative connotations. But it is a fascinating arena, and sometimes you have to jolt to get out of flow if it's in that negative sense. But isn't it funny? Okay. And I'm gonna talk about Mary Poppins, the film, the original film.
Oh, yeah.
And in there, Mary Poppins goes along with Bert, the chimney sweep, who meets Uncle Albert, and Uncle Albert is laughing away up on the ceiling, and they're all having tea on the ceiling. And the song is, I love to laugh, ha, 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 and they're all twisting up on the ceiling. And then Mary Poppins says, okay, spit spot, it's time to go. And Uncle Albert says, oh, that's really sad. And everybody starts to come out of flow, and they all come down. It's a great film. We can learn so much from these films, because the directors are absolutely brilliant telling us about life. But of course, you can get back into flow, as we saw with Uncle Albert and Bert, the chimney sweep, because he tells another joke. And
they go up again.
And they go up again. I know a man with a wooden leg called Smith. And says, well, what's his other leg called? Probably. Yeah, sorry, Carla, I don't want to start you off. But probably one of the worst jokes ever told on screen.
The original dad joke.
It was a dad joke, and I'm a dad. So, there are stages here, but I want to go back, and I want to give people some hope and insight. There will have been. The older you are, the more opportunity you've had in many respects, because you've been around longer. There will have been at least one occasion where you were really in the flow. You may have been driving the flow, maybe doing a sport or an exercise where you're achieving your personal best, and you're willing yourself on. It might have even been putting a bet on the horses. It really doesn't matter, frankly. You need to experience that and capture it, bottle it up, put a lid on it, and every time you're down, open up the lid, and go back and laugh on the ceiling, as Mary Poppins did. So we can all do it, but the issue is, and Jeanne, I think you said it, practice. We don't practice it enough. And this is where I think athletes have got a distinct advantage, because they know what their personal best is.
And they have people holding that space so they can learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
And their coaches make them practice.
Yeah.
The thing is one of the recognitions I had early on was there's a power struggle. When my son was little, he thought he had power. I thought I had power, and we would struggle. And when he was a teenager, I learned, oh my God, I'm in the middle of a power struggle with my 13-year-old. And I took myself out of it. And I basically said, you're old enough to know what consequences are. So we're going to be clear on this. And that dissipated a power struggle. and helped me get more into the flow of being his mother and guide. Because I firmly believe parents need to be parents. We're not their best friends. So we recognized in a conversation that his job was to push the limits and my job was to hold tight on the limits. So there's a natural, friction going on. And that's we have that with the flow. There's a natural friction because we think we know what we need. And, God or the universe, whatever you call it, is like, let me tell you more. But the important part with practice is learning the lessons so that you can move forward. Yeah, Carla, I saw the wave.
You saw the wave and it was going, the thing is, and I'm coming back to my original question, is that our minds are so focused. And if we have been taught that you can't do anything right, and everyone's saying that to you, you stop looking at your own flow. You stop looking at how you want to progress in life because you've been told, oh, you're only dreaming. It cannot happen. I can't tell you, I can't even begin to count how many times I've heard that in my life.
Oh, you're such a cute little girl. I love how you dream, but engineering is for guys. Oh, right. Did I hear that?
But I'm not going to be an engineer anyway, so we can forget that thought. So if we're thinking that way, how can we help people who, also me, who are in that mindset, shift that mindset with, hey, there are miracles happening every day, every moment. Just open up your stupid eyes. Well, they're not stupid, but you know what I'm saying. Open up your eyes and see. You opened up your eyes this morning, you see the world. You took a breath in this morning when you opened your eyes. That's a miracle. It's a miracle that you got up out of bed and went and took a shower. Look at what you have instead of what you don't have. And what you all get stuck with, I don't have this, I can't do it. The moment I let go of some things, things began to shift for me. And I believe this happens for everyone. Mirza, you look like you want to say something.
It just goes back to what you were saying, that, and we discussed like last time, I think there was a mind cannot solve the problem at the level of thinking that has created the problem. Once you come out of that, right, you're able to see the situation from a bird's eye view with more clarity. And clarity is very important. Where you are in life and where you want to go, there's a gap, there's a cognitive dissonance. Goes back to what Jeanne was saying. You have to have self-acceptance, self-determination, self-realization, self-inquiry, self-discovery. When you go on a self-journey, so you realize that where I am standing and where I want to go. What is my current version? What is my desired version? What is my real self? What is my ideal self? And you push past those obstacles and overcome and become with the grit and stamina, with the perseverance and consistency and persistency. And that actually requires you, once you go through that with the grit and stamina, grit actually, and discipline and grit is the next level, that actually attracts the flow. That's when you start seeing the result. And your brain, there's something called reticular activating system in our brain that would respond to our new conviction and confirmation that we are becoming that new person. So it goes back to British people, they wanted to win the Olympics, like Olympic boatings, where so many athletes are there and they have to push through. And they're like, we are the ones who bring cricket to the world, many other sports, and yet it's so embarrassing. And we are the ones who've been outperformed by all other people now in the world, right? What the heck is wrong with us? So they did some research, and there was whatever mind can visualize, it can materialize. Whatever mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. So they came up with one little sentence, and all these athletes, Jeanne, they was practicing like this thing for 2 consecutive years. Everything that they were doing in their life, they were asking this one question. If they're eating food, they're drinking, they're doing like partying, is it making my boat go fast? Or will it make my boat go slow? My life's boat. What is your mission and vision? And what is your objective? What is the desired outcome I will need to get out of this situation? I'm just using this metaphor to apply in every facet of our life, because we are as good as we challenge ourselves. And in mind, in body, in spirit, in health, in wealth, in relationship, in body, in being, in balance, in business, in earning, bank accounts, inner peace, happiness. Is it making my boat go fast? Or will it make my boat go slow? Once you start taking those actions with the grit and stamina, despite the excitement that you set yourself and it waves out, but you're still up on the course of action towards the desired outcome, towards the future impossible version, then that grit will attract the flow state. So it goes back to you practicing your craft over and over to the point it defines you. So there's no such thing that you don't let somebody steal your dream. People who can do something themselves, they want to tell you you can do it. Don't let anyone tell you what you're not. Because Henry Ford says it very best. If you tell yourself you can do something, you can achieve something, you can get to some desired outcome, you're correct. And if you tell yourself you can't do something, you're still correct. It's all the choices and decisions. And you're living on the self-actualization stage and seeing the bird's eye view and asking yourself, will it make my boat go fast? Or is it going to make my boat go slow? Those were my few humble things. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'd like to, excuse me, I'd like to point out that, Carla, you're right. We are taught a certain way. And as adults, we have to look at and interpret even how we're taught a different way. We are taught limits. We are taught what's safe. We are taught what I like to think of is kind of the left brain ego kind of way of thinking. And as we become adults, we need to teach our young adults how to look beyond that and engage the right brain and engage creativity and engage the idea of vision. And it's one of the things that I think as a coach that we bring, and all of us are coaches in some form or another, we get to see the people that we're supporting in a different light than what they can see. And I've heard coaches talk about why they need coaches, because they can only see themselves in a certain way and others can see them. So I actually say, let me hold the vision with you, because once you decide how you want to reach out, how you want to be that larger person, then the world comes at you and has a way of whittling you down. And I experienced this when I was trying to get healthy after, and it was more about mental health after a very messy divorce. I had a lot of people coming at me with what I could and couldn't do. And it happened at work, and it happened at home, and it happened with my family. And there was one person I was working with who said, let's get out of that noise. Let's get out of that mess and look above. What is it that you want to do? How is it that you want to grow? And, luckily I'm still friends with that person. She was a hypnotherapist at the time. And I still reach out to her from time to time, 30 years later, because she was somebody who was able to get me out of the pattern. And it's a power pattern, where others have power over me. And I didn't understand it at the time. That was a lesson I had to learn. There are people who have a way of having power over you. And God bless her and her living soul. My mother had power over me until I was 35. And she could keep me under her thumb by simply saying, I need you to come home. and I would find a way to pack up the kid and change my schedule and get home when she needed, and around 35, we had a discussion, and it was not the discussion you think you're going to have with your mother. It happened to be about the abortion crisis we have in the United States. And I actually just said to her, Mom, this is about choices and decisions. This is about who has power over the decision. And frankly, nobody has that power over me. And that discussion changed my whole relationship with my mother. We started having conversations on an adult level. And that was a lesson that I had to take into other things. So when my boss tried to do the same thing, I could sit down with my boss and say, I get where you're coming from, but that's not the right way to do it. Here's what I think we should do. Have you thought about that? And then the boss would go like, no, I never thought about that. So it changed. And that's what I think we need to experience when we want to get into the flow, is changing our thinking, changing our vision, knowing that we're going to take 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, natural, normal. Then we take 3 steps forward again, and maybe only 1 step back. And then we're comfortable taking 3 steps forward and saying, this is it. This is where I am. Our brain is the most powerful computer in the world. And it has a way of coloring how we see things. And it's up to us to change how we work with that color book. Nigel, you're shaking your head?
Nodding as usual. Because it all makes sense. I want to just pick up this this word purpose that Mirza referred to about what makes the boat go faster. One of the core elements of being mind fit, in other words, having a can-do attitude, is driven with a real sense of purpose. So only one of 4. I'm not going to tell you what the other 3 are because it's not relevant to today. But driven with a real sense of purpose. Imagine what that conjures up in you as an individual. If you are driven with a real sense of purpose, who's going to get in your way? Nobody. Who's going to stop you? Nobody. Yeah, you might say I am, but if you're really driven with a sense of purpose, nothing's going to stop you. And interesting enough, over the years, we've worked with teams, we work with the Olympic rowers, we've also worked with hairdressers. And this purpose can be very personal to you and the small team, just like make the boat go faster. And you can have 1,000 things beyond there, including diet and what exercise regime you do, and how big the boat is, and what financing you need to do to make a second boat, because it was unheard of at that time to have a second boat, because these boats are really expensive, But equally, you can have a purpose which revolves around someone you're doing it for. And I pick out hairdressers because there couldn't be anything further away from sailors and rowers. When we've worked with Salon Arena, we've said, okay, so what really drives you? What really turns you on? And interestingly enough, it tends to be the youngest member of the team that says, I want someone to leave my seat and feel like $1 million. What are they doing? They're cutting hair. And that's what some of the senior stylists said. I cut hair. Oh, that. Does that get you out of bed? Because it wouldn't get me out of bed. But typically it's the youngest person that turns around and says, well, I want the other person to feel fantastic because then they'll come back. And being an entrepreneur, Mirza, you know how important repeat business is. Yeah. So when that male or female walks out of that salon, that person says, I want them to feel like $1 million and I've done my little bit. Yeah. Now, that's driven, isn't it, with a real sense of purpose. And the interesting thing is, and I know Carla said about we're all very focused. We're not very focused because we're not very driven. And most of us don't know what our purpose really is. So the challenge to everyone's listening is, have you got a purpose? because having a real purpose, no one will stop you. I can give you hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of examples where the light bulb came on when I just asked the question, what's your purpose? And that person has started to involve themselves in, well, do you know what? I really don't know, but let's, and you can do this really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But once you do it, all this thing about going with the flow and being courageous and am I in a negative flow, all start to come to fruition because you stop. If you're in flow and you think, am I in the right place? There's a trigger and it stops you. And you ask the question of yourself, what direction am I going in? I feel really good about this, but am I just being a me too and doing what everyone else is doing? Or am I being innovative? I don't really know. Well, how do you find the answer to that? Ask a friend. It's pretty simple stuff, Just ask somebody else. Google it. See what other people are doing. And all of a sudden, you can then get back in the flow very quickly if you're going in the right direction. Or you can keep looking for the answer and saying, well, I'm clearly not in the right place here. I need to do some more research. And that's not beating yourself up. That's being smart. It's being aware of exactly where you are. And again, another thing that people aren't very good at is being aware.
Absolutely.
And you don't have to be aware to not walk into a lamppost. I mean, that's just stupidity. But awareness is, what's going on here?
Unless your purpose is to make people laugh.
Well, yeah, you could do that too.
I remember trying inline skates once. I put them on. It was a babysitter who said, here, try it. And I put them on, not knowing that, as you grow over the years, your center for balance changes quite significantly. It's not like you're 10 years old again. I put them on and I tried to skate and something happened and I started going straight for a lamppost and I grabbed it because I hit it, so I grabbed it and I'm holding on to it. And there was an older gentleman sitting in his porch watching, trying so hard not to laugh. I could tell he was trying so hard. And I turned to him and I looked at him and I said, I feel pretty, oh, so pretty. So we all laughed. And I tried it several times, but inline skates were not for me.
Well, one of the biggest problems there is that the mind thinks you're 18 years old.
Yeah, exactly.
The body soon tells you you're not.
But the idea of having a purpose, having a vision of where you want to go, I'm not sure it's taught to us very explicitly.
It's not taught at all.
So, well, thank you for. I was trying to be polite to the whole world of, but that's, it is not taught. And it's something that we kind of stumble into, but that's one of the reasons I always ask, is there a lesson in this? Did you learn something? Because the lessons that we get from the world are so different than the lessons that we get in a professional classroom. The world is trying to make us live a life. And when we can learn that a vision or a purpose can be as simple as, I want to make people happy, then we I'm going to make up a word, we decomplexify. We make things.
I'm going to write that one down. I'm going to use that.
Yeah. We've changed the language a lot. So problem solving is now a verb, and as a writer, I go, but decomplexify. Yeah, let's make that trend, because we make things so complex in our own minds that it's hard for us to dig out of it. There was a conversation I was having with a minister, and she simply said, God is love. And, I was in the midst of this horrible divorce that I was going through. So that was just too easy. So in my mind, I made it so much more complex. And about 2 hours later, after we're having this really animated conversation, I looked at her and I went, oh my God, that is so simple. And that would, for me, that was a lesson. Things can be simple.
Yeah.
Mirza?
Yeah.
It is our minds that makes things so very, very difficult.
Yeah.
We would
Mind.
quiet our brains, our minds, life would be very different. I know in my case recently, I got kind of stuck in thoughts yesterday that were going nowhere. And the only way that I could change it was by saying, hey, my mind needs to get quiet. I am talking way too much. And having said that, believe it or not, we have been talking for a while.
Far too long.
Too long?
Yeah, far too long.
Okay, so having said that, would you like to say your last few words on the subject?
Yeah, I'm gonna say a few things, and I'm gonna, and that will count as my last statement. Einstein says that if you can't explain something good enough, simple enough, you don't know it very well enough. Steve Jobs says simplicity is harder than complexity. Goes back to what Neville was saying. Once you have a vision and mission and your objective and your purpose, massively transformative purpose in front of you, it's no day in your life you're working. It's easy for you to step into your power, step into your flow state, from point A to point B, So what do you think is what you become, and how you think that actually controls everything. Because 9 out of 10 of everything is in your head. You believe in your attitude, and your attitude will determine life's altitude. That's all there is to it when it comes to you stepping into massively transformative purpose. In tech fraternity, we always begin with end in mind. You always find an unmet need, and then goes back to what he was saying, like with the hairdresser. It's all about customer acquisition, their conversion, their retention. So having a lifetime customer value, but again, that also requires you to be aligned and in line with the desired outcome, the massively transformative purpose that you define. Unfortunately, our school doesn't teach this thing. Our academia doesn't do that. But these are the things, through these thought-provoking conversations, people, you're creating an impact. And we are living in the most extraordinary time this mankind has ever lived. Thank you so much for having me. As always, Carla, very power-packed and thought-provoking session. And look forward to be part of that.
Thank you, Mirza, for coming and being a part of the conversation. Neville, what would you like to say?
Well, we need to keep it simple, and I'll go back to something that I revert to probably far too often for lots of people, but it's a reality. A 2-year-old doesn't think. A 2-year-old just gets on with it. And we need to go back to those days. And the interesting thing is, no one can say, I was never 2 years old. Good luck with that one, Good luck with that one. And the good thing is, you've got other 2-year-olds you can look at, because they're everywhere.
True. Jeanne?
So I'd like to repeat something that the great American philosopher Mirza Ali said. We're drowning in information and we're lacking in wisdom. So I'd like to take a moment to just remind ourselves that we have all the infinite wisdom that we need, and it's inside. We just need to quiet our logical mind from time to time and just listen to that small voice that gets overcrowded in our head. It can be as simple as taking a deep breath and taking a moment.
And having said that, my words are, we need to go back. I love the book, everyone. What is it? Everything you should have learned in school, but didn't. We don't deal with our human values. We deal with subjects, math and English and reading, yes, you need the skills, but unless we teach our children human values and to go within and get to know each other, we're not allowing the world to grow. Allowing not the world to grow, or allowing the individuals to grow into who they really are. And having said that, we are about to end the show. We will be back again. Jeanne and I will be back again on Thursday. I am going to see if I can get, we have one person already, but I'm thinking of getting someone from this podcast for Thursday. We'll see who takes me up on it. And we have Camera and Rizvi on Thursday. And having said that, people, stay with the flow. Stay with what's right to you, not what everyone else is telling you is right. Jeanne, have I forgotten anything?
Just a reminder that we run this show live on YouTube, and you see it also on other social media platforms. And we ask that you share it, comment, and like it wherever you see it. That helps us with the algorithms so that we can get more people to log in and listen and participate. We'd love to get comments while we're live so that we can read them and respond. Also, Carla has a page at Patreon. It's called Giggle Lady, and she is looking to raise funds to keep the production going on this show and the Learning English by Speaking English show. So please log on to patreon.com Giggle Lady and check it out.
Thank you, Jeanne.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Can everyone wave goodbye, and we will go off air. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and thank you, Mirza, Neville, and Jeanne.